Good evening, everybody. Welcome. My name is Rowan Neufeld. I'm the events coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. From this end, we are streaming live from Treaty 6 territory, homeland of the Métis Nation, and the traditional lands of the Plains Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota. I'm so pleased that you're all joining us tonight to celebrate two new releases through Radiant Press, Earth, Cool and Dirty by Jacob Lee Bachinger, and The Errant Husband by Elizabeth Haynes. We're also joined tonight by a special guest host, Katherin Edwards. I'd also like to extend our thanks to Radiant Press and especially Deborah Bell for working with us on tonight's event. Radiant Press is an independent Regina-based publisher, and I will link to some information about them in the chat here. Before I introduce our host for the evening, I have a couple Zoom housekeeping items. We've enabled live auto captions tonight, which you can access by clicking the live transcript button along the bottom of your screen. And there is also a Q&A box for you to submit questions for tonight's authors. So we'll have some time towards the end of the evening to get to those. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our host for tonight, Katherin Edwards. I might just ask her to turn, oh, here she is, okay. Katherin has her MFA in writing from the University of British Columbia. Her fiction has appeared in the Malahat Review, as well as the collaborative novel At the Edge. Her creative nonfiction has appeared in This Together. A two-time winner at Eden Mills for poetry, she has also been published in Arc, The New Quarterly, as well as in chapbook form with Jack Pine Press. And she lives in Kamloops, BC. So welcome, Katherin Edwards.
Thank you, Rowan. Excellent. Hello, my name is Katherin Edwards, and I am pleased to be hosting Radiant Fall Authors Read. We acknowledge that we are gathered here on sacred land, on both the traditional and unceded lands of the Shuswap or Secwepemc people in Treaty 7 territory. Today, these lands continued to be the shared territory of many diverse peoples from near and far. We are here because this land was and is occupied. It is important for us to recognize this colonial history and presence, to respect Indigenous elders and ancestors and the stewards of this land, honor our responsibilities to the land, and recognize that we are all treaty people. Thank you for joining us. Coleridge said, "Prose equal words in their best order, while poetry are the best words in the best order." Today, we are fortunate to have both a prose writer and a poet speaking with us. Elizabeth Haynes is here with her book, The Errant Husband. There it is. And Jacob Lee Bachinger is here with his book of poetry called Earth, Cool and Dirty. Elizabeth is a writer who lives in Calgary, and full disclosure here, we have known each other for close to 40 years. More than half a century, beginning back in the day when we were in grade 1 together. And earlier this week, I heard Elizabeth's voice for the first time in 40 years. I have known her to always have been a writer, and am pleased to reconnect with her and to read about her accomplishments. Her fiction and nonfiction has appeared in magazines including Alberta Views, The New Quarterly, the Malahat Review, Prism, Room, and is forthcoming in the Fiddlehead. She has also been published in anthologies, and most recently, This Place, a Stranger, Canadian Women Traveling Alone, Caitlin Press, Shy, an anthology, Waiting, and You Look Good for Your Age, University of Alberta Press. She has won the John White Memorial Essay Competition, Alberta Book Awards, the Western Magazine Award for Fiction, and the American Heart Award for Fiction. Her short story collection, Speak Mandarin, Not Dialect, Thistledown Press, was a finalist for the Alberta Book Awards. Elizabeth has studied writing at the Universities of Victoria and Calgary, at Booming Ground, UBC, and the Banff Centre Wired Writing Studio. Jacob Bachinger lives in southern Alberta, on the edge of the coulees and Oldman River, with his wife and son, plus a cat, and a newly acquired tank full of guppies. Before settling on the prairies, he lived in different points all across Canada, from Nanaimo to St. John's. Jacob teaches academic writing at the University of Lethbridge. His poems have been featured in journals like the Malahat Review and the Fiddlehead. Earth, Cool and Dirty is his first collection. He is working on an additional degree at Memorial University, writing a book about his time in Labrador, and waiting for the snow to fall. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, we're going to start with you. And Stephen King said that good fiction is the truth inside the lie. Will you tell us briefly if you agree with Stephen King? And is there a truth about the character Thelma that aligns with your own personal truth? And how did the Errant Husband even come into existence?
Yeah, excellent questions. Absolutely. I was thinking about that question, that so the lie, of course, being in fiction. And so I guess in Thelma's case, the truth is buried, and it's buried in a number of ways. So it's I don't want to give too much away, but it's buried in her body, it's buried in her mind, and it's buried in her past. So yeah, I absolutely agree with Stephen King. And in terms of where the novel started, I traveled to Cuba several times. The first time in 1997 with a very animated group of Canadian communists and leftists, from a lot of them from the Canada-Cuba Friendship Association. And that's where I went to a number of different places. So I went to hospitals, went to education centers, seniors facilities, but we also went on some tours. And that's when I learned about Isabel de Bobadilla, who was the wife of Hernando de Soto. And she's memorialized in a weather vane, which I'll read about in a minute, but it's atop a castle. And apparently she is waiting for Hernando to come back from Florida. And as we know, he never did return when he went looking for more gold in the Fountain of Youth. So I was kind of intrigued by her and wanted to learn more about her. Of course, there's lots about Hernando, not so much about Isabel written. And so I kind of made some parts of her up, as well as, well, I won't tell you how she interacts with Thelma, but there's an interaction.
That's fantastic, Elizabeth. Will you read for us?
Absolutely.
I'd love to hear your first session, please. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is from right at the beginning of the novel. So a prologue. In the city of Havana, where Avenida del Puerto meets Desamparado, stands El Castillo de la Real Fuerza, the first and oldest of 4 forts guarding Havana Harbor. Built in 1558, it is surrounded by limestone walls 6 meters thick. Tourists can saunter inside the cannon-studded courtyard, cross the moat by drawbridge, admire the suits of armor, then climb to the top of a round tower for views of old Havana and the sea. On top of that tower is La Heraldia, a bronze weather vane of a woman in a diaphanous gown holding a scepter, her crowned head held high, scanning the ocean. She is Isabel de Bobadilla, wife of conquistador Hernando de Soto. He sailed away to conquer Florida in 1539, leaving her to govern the island. He did not return. Chapter 1, Cuba, 2005. All of the tourists from Thelma's flight pushed their luggage carts through the glass doors of the international airport into the brilliant Havana afternoon. Customs officials gather around a couple of expatriate Cubans, leaving a scowling young woman in a tight blue uniform to look after the rest of them. She stares at Thelma's new espadrilles for a few moments, then nods her past. Outside, warm air caresses her. Men in starched white guayaberas and black pants wave signs. Mr. and Mrs. Marco, Familia Santa Cruz, Havana Tour, Amas Tour, Hotel Melia Cohiba. Thelma pulls her suitcase over to a stone bench and searches for Wally. The waiting crowd surges forward with every whoosh of the glass doors, but Wally is nowhere to be seen. Maybe he's waiting further down the sidewalk where there are fewer people. She pulls her suitcase away from the entrance, stopping to smell some flowers. Jasmine, heavenly. A man appears at her side. Taxi, senora, he whispers. No, thanks. Another man flanks her. Where are you going? The second man asks. Nowhere. Nowhere. That is just outside of Havana. I can drive you there very cheap, he says, flashing a grin and stroking his mustache. I'm waiting for my husband. Your husband is Cuban? Asked the first man, who is thin and clean shaven. Canadian, Thelma replies, looking past him to a guy in Bermuda shorts and a wrinkled t-shirt who could be, but isn't, Wally. He is working here? Asked the thin man. No, yes, he's doing some research. He's writing. What is he writing? A novel based on Hernando de Soto, the first governor of Cuba. According to my husband, his wife Isabel did most of the governing. Es verdad, said the guy with the mustache. Do you know that Isabel de Bobadilla is a weather vane, La Heraldía, on top of El Castillo de la Real Fuerza? It is because she went to the tower every afternoon to see if Hernando was returning yet from Florida. She is also the symbol on the Havana Club rum bottle. Yes, I do. Well, she didn't know about the rum. And I'll just skip to the end of that section. So Thelma's waiting, the guys come back, and they're talking to her more about the need for a taxi. Light is leaching from the sky. Where the hell is Wally? She wrote down her flight details and put them with his ticket so he wouldn't lose them. Senora, we will take you to your hotel. There are no more flights and there will be no more minibuses, no taxis. Maybe your husband is ill. Thelma sighs. He better be. If he's not, she's going to kill him or injure him badly.
That's fabulous. Thank you, Elizabeth. I really think that's such a great hook. Being in a foreign country, expecting someone to meet you, and you are there by yourself. That just opens up the novel to so many possibilities, of which you go down many avenues trying to figure out exactly where is Wally, what's going on, and then how you weave the past with little hints. Well, maybe things aren't exactly what they thought, Thelma thought they were. So it's really good. I really, really think it's a strong beginning, which only gets stronger as you go through the work. It's fantastic. Thank you for reading.
Yeah, thank you.
Jacob, best words, best order. I'd like to say that your book is that, as well as being a perfectly timed book. Can you tell us a bit about the work and specifically how you decided on your title, Earth -cool, and dirty? I'm always intrigued by titles that have punctuation in them. They stop a person. You see them on the shelf and it's like, whoa, cool. So if you can talk to us about that and then give us a reading, that would be fantastic.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. I'm glad you like the punctuation. I was at times concerned that maybe it was a bit too quirky. But the punctuation seemed necessary, especially the comma, because I always heard the title Earth, Cool, and Dirty with a slight pause or a slight caesura in the title. And I chose it as the title. It's also the first poem in the book because it highlights some of the book's themes for me, in which the earth, nature, non-human nature, is both cool controlled and dispassionate, but also dirty. It's also chaotic and passionate. And so it covers a dichotomy or a binary or a contradiction that runs throughout the book.
Fantastic. I love that. That's great. I love it.
Oh,
Very
thank
cool.
you.
Can you read for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
I'll read the title poem. Perhaps you heard the doorbell in the background. I use the bell as my signal to start.
Oh.
Earth cool and dirty. Dig them with a spade and let them be. Spud dumb. Earth cool and dirty. Let them give you grit, black sickles wedged under the quick of your nails. Dump them in a basement bin, the depths where you've cellared apples, homebrew, the hand tools you keep handy for jobs put off until tomorrow. One winter afternoon, preparing the Sunday roast, you grope into the moist and musty corner of the cold closet, where you find them, pale, tendrils dangling from puckered eyes, and they are uglier, more vital than you dreamt. Cool and round, earth dumb in your cupped hands.
Lovely.
Oh, thank you. I think I have time for a little bit more. Because Halloween is just a few days away, I thought I would read one called Ghost Stories. And there's an epigraph to the poem from Ray Bradbury, taken from his novel, Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is a wonderful book. And it's a line, it's an image that I've always loved. Shadows of rain moved on far windows. Sunlight on a bare wall, bare floor, laundry on the line. Sunday morning liquor store, church bells. Storm clouds building over the rail yard, toys tucked away in cardboard boxes. Freighters in the harbor under gray skies, garden tools in the rain, a barn and field in twilight, library windows lit on a summer evening, an empty hall, footsteps.
Fabulous, fabulous. I really love those little tiny snapshots of as you pan around, go from point to point to point, and then the auditory, the footsteps in the hall, right? I think it's just so strong. It's just fantastic. The imagery is great. And I love poems that connect, but don't necessarily connect. You just visually see little tiny pieces. Very well done. Very well done.
You.
We will start with you again. We will have a second set of questions. Jacob is also a second reading. I find poetry is slow and precise play. And just listening to your lines, it shows how careful you are with your words, how everything is measured. And the revisions I find are constant. However, I find with every revision, a new poem emerges. And I think that is the best words, best order. So if you flip an order, suddenly you've got a new vision that you may not have wanted. Do you find that? And can you tell me how long you've been working on this collection?
To start with the final portion of your question first, the collection in some ways took about 2 decades to put together. I think the oldest poem in here dates from about 2000, 2001. So I do promise to speed up my output a little bit. And which I guess then leads to the revision and rewriting process that you're asking about. And I suppose I'm lucky in some regards that I always feel like something essential about the poem happens almost immediately in the first draft. The idea, the mood of the piece, the images. There's always something there that remains constant throughout all the versions. So there's a real family resemblance from the first draft through to the last. Though I would not say that they were the same poem. It's just that, a family resemblance.
Very
And,
nice. Very nice. I like that. I like that because, and it's interesting too, I find, to write a poem and to leave it and you go back, and perhaps the writer is in a different spot as well when you were doing revisions. So you see something differently. It's like, how could I have seen it like that? No, it means this, right? So I guess one needs to be a bit careful when it comes to revisions over a long period of time, because I think to be true to the poem, you need to be true to yourself when you wrote it, and to keep it and to see the maturity or whatever change as you go along. But I really love what you said. Can you read some more for us? That would be great.
Yeah, certainly. I'll read a family poem. My son asleep, age 4. Taking the flashlight and storybook from his hands, I touch his sleep-softened fingers. They feel like blossoms. The springtime will be short, I know, his, mine, ours together. This darkened room, our darkened house, what no one told me, what I've had to learn for myself. To love this much is painful. Not knowing what else to do, like a dutiful failure, I set the light and book aside and pull the comforter to his chin. Breath quiet, eyes closed, he dreams beyond my fears. And I'll read another family-themed poem, A Different Generation. This one is called Grandpa Post-Pastoral. And indeed, my grandfather was a farmer in southern Ontario, near the town of Durham. And my memories of the farm are not unlike Dylan Thomas's Fern Hill. I was very young at the time, and of course, I was too young to see the work involved. And this poem is an attempt to reimagine that in a way, but from my perspective. Grandpa, post-pastoral. After selling the farm, Grandpa bought cartons of tailor-mades instead of rolling his own. But he still wore work clothes, green pants, checkered shirts, now clean and pressed. Deep in the armchair, he waved the remote, weeding channels for The Price is Right, The Young and the Restless. Sifting wheat from chaff, he said, "If I like the girl, I watch the show. If I don't, I find another." Then he lit a cigarette and exhaled discreetly, deflecting attention from himself. Without a cigarette or the clicker, his hands were still. Was he bored without the farm? Not that he wanted the work, but he missed it, all the same, as a man will.
Lovely, just lovely. Your lines are clean and precise and clear, and a lovely example of what Patrick Lane once said to a class I was in, and that's that all poems must tell a story. And you take the ordinary, and by making it unique and beautiful by looking closely at it. And I think that's a gift. And another instructor of mine was Stephen Price, and he said, you must look closely, just look closely. And I think that's at the heart of the poet, is to be able to see something. And another thing that I find you're really good at is turning the key in the final or close to final lines. It shows the other side of poetry, why poetry exists, not just to be beautiful, but to discover the subject in a way not seen before. And I love that. I think your work is absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for reading.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very kindly.
Yes. We'll get Elizabeth back here. Hi, Elizabeth. It's obvious that you've traveled and you know place. Does the experience of travel spark a new work for you, or do you have the idea of travel to do research? And has the pandemic changed on how you write?
Yeah, I think travel definitely sparks the writing for me. As I mentioned at the beginning, seeing La Heraldia and then thinking, oh, who was this woman? Where did she come from? I found out a little bit about her, that she was convent educated, that she married late, that her father was also a conquistador in Central America. But yeah, I found a few facts and then I started to imagine. So I think travel, seeing things, learning things definitely sparks me, sparks my imagination, I guess. And then, sometimes I want to go back and learn more. And yeah, the pandemic, of course, not being able to travel, I have to do that through books and movies and not so much with the real travel. So has it affected my writing? I think it's made me a bit lazier with my writing, but yeah, I have so much that I'm working on that I just have to get myself to sit down and do it.
Nice. Yeah. Good. Elizabeth, will you read for us again?
Absolutely.
Thank
so
you.
This section takes place further on in the novel where Thelma has gone with taxi drivers Tomas and Jorge, the other taxi driver, as well as another tourist, Kathy, that she has met to look for Wally. The road is littered with potholes. Tomas jerks the wheel, trying to avoid a water-filled crater, but drives right into it. Now they are stuck. Tomas tries to turn the car around. He roars it back and forth, grinding between first and reverse. The engine sputters, then stalls. Mierda. He turns the key. Nothing but the smell of gas. Tries again. No groans, no whines, no whispers, nada. Tomas lights a cigarette. Nice combination, fire and petrol. Don't worry, says Jorge softly. We can resolve the problem. I have exactly 2 weeks in this country before we have to leave. 2 weeks to find Wally, 1.5 actually, and we're stuck in the middle of nowhere. There is no middle of nowhere in Cuba, she groans. Well, maybe not, but if there was, this would be it. Evening descends, riding down the sky and resting on the tops of the mangrove trees like a flock of birds leaving their red flight path behind. Don't worry, Thelma, they'll fix it, Kathy says. Thelma decides not to reply. Kathy's the kind of woman who thinks that everything will work out for the best. But it doesn't always, sweetie, not by a long shot. Jorge and Tomas get out of the car. The hood squeals open. They're arguing, talking loudly and too quickly for Thelma to make out what they're saying. Wally appears to her, quoting from Robert Graves' Through Nightmare. The untamable, the live, the gentle, have you not known them? Whom? They carry time loops so river-wise around their house, there's no way in by history's road to name and number them. Why does she like the poem so much? Because Wally does and her father did? Because of the language, the emotion? She loves the references to those who don't fit into the time in which they live, who can't find a place in the modern world. It is a lament for those people and places beyond time, stuck in a tragic or a heroic history. This country. We've come to an island that lives in the past, Wall. Every day in the newspaper, Grandma, revolutionary battles are relived. The patron saint of the island is Jose Marti, a 19th century poet. The blowing up of the Maine, the Spanish-American War, the taking of Guantanamo, why, they just happened yesterday, didn't they? You told me De Soto left his love-struck Isabel in Santiago. Or maybe she wasn't so love-struck anymore, having been dragged across the Atlantic to Santiago, only to be sent on another ship to Havana sans hubby, who decided to take the scenic route on horseback. Looking for gold, Hernando? You and the Pizarros had the Inca gold. How much gold could a man possibly need? Isabel's Spanish ship was tossed by hurricanes. She had only her slaves and a disgraced niece, Leonor, having found herself in the family way by Hernando's second in command, for company. 40 days later, she arrived in a Havana recently wrecked by pirates. When Hernando finally arrived, he prepared his ships and left for Florida, leaving Isabel to do what? Govern? Yes, a little of that. And wait, a lot of that, a hell of a lot of waiting. Isabel bore no children. Was she past childbearing age? Did they die in utero? What was her life like? She had a brutal father and was married late to a man who'd had several mistresses and children. Perhaps she didn't expect to marry at all. She was prepared to accept the hardship of the new world, long absences from family and friends and from her husband. Did she also accept the cruelty, fornication, torture, and murder of the native peoples as the right of the conquerors? And if she didn't accept these things, what could she do? What other choices did she have? Thelma had choices, many choices, one of which was to marry Wally, to love and honor him. Though she did not agree to obey, she is not an obedient woman. Is Rosa obedient? Was Isabel? Or did they just dress in duty's trappings and pretend to be, as women often do, to survive? Outside the window, a half moon settles on the treetops. Tomas lopes down the road, going for help or disappearing too.
That's fantastic. Elizabeth, a couple of days ago when you did the other Zoom meeting, you realized something about Thelma that you perhaps had not consciously written. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I'm just trying to think, what was it I realized about Thelma? Was it about her being a different woman?
No, the transformation that she had, that she started out right. She started out as a static character, or how she moved, and you sort of discovered later that you had written her in a way that when she was searching what she was like, and then when she found something else what she was like. Can you talk a little bit about how she evolves and changes because of her circumstances?
Yeah, great question. Sorry, I was a little on that. Yes. So yeah, we find Thelma at the beginning. She's she's frustrated, she's upset, and she's in a hurry to have her marriage renewal holiday. But I think as she slows down, the past starts to come back, and the past that she's kind of pushed away, her grief that she's pushed away. And so her surface, the surface Thelma, who's kind of funny and a little bit bitchy, she starts to go deeper, and there's images about geology and the landscape of Cuba, and she starts to kind of go into her own internal geology and realize how the past lives within her. And I think that eventually transform her. I don't want to give away too much, so I'm talking a bit in generalities, but I think she's transformed by being on the road and by having time to reflect and discover things about her past that she had buried.
Very cool. I love that. And if she hadn't been left at the airport, none of this would have happened.
Exactly.
Right? You would maybe have a travel story.
Yeah.
But because of that, she's pressed. And when we're pressed, we realize and discover most about ourselves, I think. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the final things I wanted to talk about, and what interests me, and I hope interests our audience as well, is the actual process of capturing writing. It's like that, a crazy butterfly. I said, poetry for me arrives in gusts of fast winds, like dirt devils on a hard Scrabble road. You can see them and then they're gone. It's so quick. that it's difficult sometimes to actually capture them. Longer works like Elizabeth's are like a wind that bills from far, far away until it's almost consuming, and you have to sit down and you write the story. You have no choice. Jacob, could you please, and thank you, talk about how poetry comes to you? It's been said that inspiration happens in the shower, in bed, or on the bus. How does it hit you, and how do you capture it?
I suppose it happens for me when I'm walking. That would be my the typical time when it arrives. And if I've had the foresight, I've left the house with a notepad and pen. Otherwise, I'm trying to burn these things into my mind as I stroll along. But yeah, it's a walking. There's something about maybe the rhythm of walking and the rhythm of words that connects. And
interesting. Do you find they're like dreams sometimes that you, as you say, unless you burn it into your mind, it's gone. Like you know, 2 or 3 lines could be absolutely gone, and you go, where do they go? It's just like a dream.
Yeah, entirely. It is like a dream. It can disappear, and like a dream, come back as well. And I know revisiting notebooks from a year or 2 ago, I sometimes am surprised at something that I'd written down and have already somewhat forgotten about. So there's something slippery about poetry, and you have to therefore be prepared. Be prepared to nab it when it.
Nab it. Nice. That's exactly right. Slippery indeed.
Fast.
Indeed. Elizabeth, if we can get you back, there's something I wanted to talk to you about too. And maybe Jacob, this applies as well. It doesn't happen often, but once in a while, the author is simply a conduit, a mere typist of the work they create. It's creepy and it's wonderful and something not often discussed. And I think, Jacob, you hit on it when you said it's slippery. Elizabeth, does Thelma still talk to you, or did she ever talk to you when you were writing and propel the story forward, and all you had to do is get out of the way and allow your fingers to type?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that question. I think Thelma definitely deepened as a character as I got to know her, and I got to know her voice. I think some of the scenes did come very easily. I don't know if I'd say it was sort of automatically, but I just started, and then she's doing her quippy, snappy comments, and it came quite easily. And then other scenes where I had to go back and fill it in, or put some transitions or some exposition, those came not as easily. But yeah, I think some of the scenes, and I wrote so many scenes that went by the wayside, but it was just Thelma. Yeah, I really feel like I know her now. I feel like she's a friend. So yeah.
Do you miss her?
And some didn't, I guess I would say.
Yeah. Do you miss her now that the book is done?
I do. I miss her. I want her to be in another book, so maybe she will be.
Why not? You are the master of this ship.
Yeah.
Jacob and Elizabeth, do you have questions for each other?
Yeah, Jacob, I just finished your fabulous book, and I love all the birds, and also your imagery about the seasons. The poem "Backyard" with the burlap grass and everything buried under the snow. I love that one. But one of my favorites was "When Birds Attack," which I thought very funny, and fabulous poem. What was the impetus for that poem?
Well, when birds attack, which is just that, what happens when birds attack, of course, owes a lot to Daphne du Maurier's short story, and of course, Alfred Hitchcock's movie. But the poem, unlike the story of the movie, is more a series of instructions, what to do when birds attack. And it just struck me as being a way of looking at catastrophe as a series of instructions, which is something I think we're all now quite used to. But when the poem was first written about 5 or 6 years ago, it seemed to me like a novel way of dealing with a difficult problem or an unlikely problem when nature turns against you. A question I have for you, Elizabeth, is there is a mystery in your novel. Are you a fan of mystery novels or other forms of genre fiction? There's definitely an element of suspense there. And
Yeah, I don't read a lot of maybe traditional mysteries, but I always like a book that has some kind of mystery that or not a mystery, but something we're trying to find out. And so, and I do read some mysteries. I like, of course, I won't be able to recall anyone's name, but there's a woman who writes with Turkish detectives. Barbara's her first name. So I read some of hers. And then there's also, you guys will probably be able to say the names, but a woman who has Italian detective, and she beautifully describes all their food and things and the setting. So I like those ones, and I might be able to come up with the names in a couple of minutes. But yeah, I do like a book that where we want to find something out, I have to say. Yeah. I also like historical books that are rooted in history, for sure.
Yeah, that's certainly evident. The love of history and the fascination with the past is very definite in your novel, in the way that the past informs the present. But another question is, does the past inform the present, or does the present rewrite the past? What's the relationship?
Yeah, I think both. I think the past informs the present, but Thelma starts to rewrite her past by examining it and by being in different circumstances where the past comes back. Yeah, so I think both.
Okay.
And I have another question for you. You write about birds so beautifully. Do you have a favorite bird?
Well, I think everywhere I go, I have a favorite. On the prairies, I love magpies. Now they're not much loved around here, but I do love them. The one bird I'm always watching is the Swainson's hawk, which is very common right here in the city of Lethbridge. It's a buteo. It's a large broad-winged hawk. We often see it, on the campus, and it's just a beautiful bird. Sometimes cantankerous, though. It will swoop at you. So when birds attack, indeed.
Exactly. Beautiful.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. We just have a few more minutes to, I'd like to ask you both another question or two. One of them is, Jacob, this is your first full-length poetry book. Elizabeth, this is your first full-length fiction book. What did you feel when you first opened that box of books from Radiant Press and there was that stack with your name on it and the cover that was just so beautiful? Can you describe in one word what that felt like? Just one. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I wrote down some words, but which one? I think I felt honored. I felt honored that Radiant published my book. Yeah.
That's a terrific.
Too, but yeah.
Nice. Jacob, how did you feel in one word?
Peaceful. Yeah, very peaceful.
Interesting. Say more. Peaceful would not be a word I would think.
I suppose the project had, all books have a long gestation period, and it just now all came together, all those many weeks, months, years, all those little threads just came together, and there it was. And my wife and son made a lovely little moment for me in which they had it on the back porch for me. So I opened it up in the October air. It was a a great moment.
That is fantastic. We are running out of time, so I just wanted to say thank you both for being part of the Radiant Fall Authors Read. Both The Errant Husband and Earth Dirty Cool are for sale at Radiant Press or at your local bookstore. Thank you for everyone who took part in this evening's discussion. Elizabeth and Jacob, thank you and congratulations on writing such fine books. I'm just so happy that you're part of the Radiant Press stable. I think it's fantastic. Thank you, Radiant Press, for publishing them. Deborah Bell Kennedy, John Kennedy, and the team. McNally, Robinson, Saskatoon, thank you for providing this platform for this discussion. And Rowan, event coordinator extraordinaire, many thanks for keeping us on track. You've been absolutely fantastic tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Katherin.
Yes, thank you.
Cheers,
Thank you.
everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much for hosting, Katherin. And I'm going to probably repeat a whole bunch of things you just said, but thanks as well to Elizabeth Haynes and Jacob Lee Bachinger for being here with us tonight. It's great to hear you all in conversation. Thanks, obviously, to Radiant Press for working with us on tonight's event. We do have copies of both books in stock, so we would encourage you to check those out either online or pop by the store. And last but not least, thanks to all of you for joining tonight. We really appreciate your support and look forward to being able to safely host in-person events again. But until then, please keep an eye on our coming events page to find out more about our virtual offerings. So take care, everyone, and thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.